I'm Jeff Wagner in for Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Well, good morning. Welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, prosecutors in the troubled John Doe investigation appealed a federal court order halting the investigation. The state judge supervising the probe has also found that the conduct prosecutors are looking at isn't a crime. I guess it's easier to not take no for an answer when you're spending taxpayer dollars. Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett declared this to be ceasefire week in the city. Unfortunately, a rash of shootings demonstrated that the criminal element apparently didn't get the message. Who would have thought? On Monday, Milwaukee native James Lovell was in town to help recognize Armed Forces Week. Captain Lovell, who flew in space 4 times, is probably best known as the commander of the ill-fated Apollo 13. I was with Captain Lovell this week. I told him I think he was much more distinguished looking than the guy who played him in the movie, Tom Hanks. And finally, the NBA finalized the sale of the Milwaukee Bucks to Wesley Edens and Mark Lasry, proving that timing is everything. I wonder what would have happened to the Milwaukee deal if Donald Sterling had imploded a couple weeks earlier. But first this morning, a consultant hired by the Wisconsin Center District called for expanding the convention center by around 110,000 feet. The claim is that the proposed $200 million expansion would allow Milwaukee to compete more effectively for meetings and conventions. The number of events at the convention center has been decreasing over the past decade. While Milwaukee will never be able to compete for conventions with cities like Las Vegas and Orlando, I guess the question is whether it can compete with Pittsburgh and St. Louis and Minneapolis. So, will a $200 million expansion pay for itself, or will it be a white elephant like the expensive but grossly underused Milwaukee Theater? Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, State Senator Alberta Darling, Milwaukee Alderman Bob Donovan, and State Representative Jim Ott. Okay, Bob, let's start with you. Good idea, bad idea? Is this $200 million will be well spent?
Well, I think it should have been spent, quite frankly, years ago in place of the Milwaukee Theater. I think that was a huge mistake that, unfortunately, the taxpayers of Milwaukee are going to be paying for decades, probably. I do believe that the convention center does need to expand. That was part of the original plan. There were 3 phases. We never got to phase 3. Expand it. We can bring in more conventions. Milwaukee should be leading the pack in many respects for cities our size. This is a great city. Let's get it done.
Mikel Holt, would this be a waste of money?
No, because I think the revenue it would generate, hotels, other commercial establishments would benefit the city in the long run. I agree it should have been done before. They haven't done it. It depends on how they would do this. Because my contention is they should sandwich this in with the Bradley Center and other projects. Now that the Grand Avenue Mall is up for sale. So do something that encompasses all of these.
Okay, but at the same time, $500 million for a new arena, $200 million for an expanded convention center, all this other stuff. I mean, pretty soon you're talking about $1 billion, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. Alberta.
Milwaukee has to get on the move. I'm not saying this convention center project should happen. I'm on the board, and I think there are a lot of questions we have to ask. But we have to do something about having a major boom in Milwaukee. It's really too dead, and there are questions about airlines, hotels, lots of big questions. It's too early to say whether it should be go or no go. But community leaders, especially the mayor, should put their heads together and decide we have an opportunity here to really do something very big, but it's not a done deal, and there are a lot of questions that need to be asked.
Well, I mean, I guess here's one of my questions. Going back to the Milwaukee Theater, when we renovated the Milwaukee Auditorium, $40-some million, the price went up because they found asbestos in it. We were told, it's going to be all these concerts and stuff, and now it's a giant white elephant because it's a wonderful facility, but there's not enough demand given all the other stuff. Is there really demand? Would we realistically get bigger conventions?
Well, that's the question. What's going to attract people to Milwaukee? And crime is an issue, and we're competing with places like Indianapolis and Nashville, Tennessee. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of energy. Milwaukee has to get a lot more energy in order to attract those conventions. It has to be an attractive place to go.
Do you think the crime is a deterrent?
It is. It's an issue. We had a survey at the district board which identified that crime is an issue.
As Jim Ott.
Well, I'll tell you, Jeff, Milwaukee is a great place to have a convention in the summertime. I mean, you get south of Chicago, it gets pretty uncomfortable in hot summer afternoons. One of the things, though, as Alberta was talking about planning, exactly what conventions are we hoping to attract that we don't attract now, and we are limited by hotel space. So I would think in the planning this move, you would have to first of all specifically say these are conventions we think we can attract that we can't attract now, and number two, do we have the space if we bring in 10 or 20,000 extra people in the city that there's hotel rooms for them?
Michael, you touched on Grand Avenue. They're going to have an auction sale of Grand Avenue. They're essentially giving it away. I mean, it's just essentially giving it away. What's the big picture for that? I mean, it certainly doesn't seem to be shopping. Is it going to be businesses? Is it going to be hotels? What would an owner do with that?
Well, when I was mentioned to the senator about crime, I really wanted to get to the point that it's perception of crime, because there's not a lot of crime downtown. But it's the same thing with the Grand Avenue Mall. I mean, we need to really have an honest discussion about this. People don't go to the Grand Avenue Mall because it's perception. There's so many black youth there that is crime ridden, and that's not been the case. But I think that they need to do a major overhaul of the Grand Avenue Mall, because as goes the Grand Avenue Mall, so goes downtown Milwaukee.
I mean, because essentially, I mean, if you get a couple $1 million, you can buy that now if you've got an idea as to what you want to do with it, but I'm not sure anybody knows what it is to do with it. Okay, what has your glass half full? What has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt.
My glass is half full because the Department of Workforce Development announced the state unemployment rate has dropped to 5.8%. My glass is half empty because the black male unemployment rate in Milwaukee remains at 55.8%. Yeah, you heard that right. And sadly, nobody really cares.
Alberta Darling.
My glass is half full because 54% of the people say, you know, Wisconsin's on the right track, and 90% plus of our job creators say that we're on the right track. That's a good thing. My glass is half empty because, you know what, I'm really tired of this cold. I've been positive. I can't do it anymore.
Okay then, Bob Donovan.
My glass is half empty, or I should say half full, because the mayor is finally doing something regarding crime and public safety. Sadly, it's half empty because what he's doing is largely ineffective.
Jim Ott.
My glass is half full today, Jeff, because General Motors has expanded its efforts to eliminate safety problems with its vehicles. It's half empty because 2.7 million cars and trucks are affected by the latest recall announced last week, bringing the total to 11 million vehicles subject to recall in 2014.
And my glass, well, it's half full because the calendar says that we're halfway through spring. My glass is half empty because the thermometer says that it's still late fall. What can you do? Next on Sunday Insight, how would you do if you got pulled over at a checkpoint to make sure you're not too drunk to drive? We're going to be talking about sobriety checkpoints. Well, 38 states currently allow police to set up sobriety checkpoints to catch drunk drivers and deter others from driving drunk. The way it works is that officials direct everyone who hits the checkpoint into a parking lot or another area. Drivers are then asked to produce their licenses and insurance information. If during the brief contact the driver shows evidence of intoxication, police conduct a more thorough investigation. Now, the Center for Disease Control says that sobriety checkpoints decrease the number of alcohol-related crashes by 20%. Many people, including lots of Wisconsin lawmakers, though, believe they are unreasonable intrusions on freedom of movement. So, are sobriety checkpoints a good idea? Let's start with a couple prominent Wisconsin lawmakers who are in the forefront of fighting drunk driving. Alberta Darling.
Well, we talked to Sheriff Clark, who really wanted us to do enabling legislation to have local municipalities like Milwaukee decide whether they wanted to have checkpoints or not tell them they had to have it. And enabling legislation just didn't fly in the legislature because of what you said. People were really afraid of the intrusion of their freedom and their rights. But we have to do something about drunken driving. And Sheriff Clark says there's a Death Valley lane in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, that he knows where these drunk drivers are coming from. from. I think we need to put a full court press on those locations and let people know we're serious about drunken driving.
Jim, I appreciate individual freedoms and not making unreasonable intrusions, but I got to tell you, I don't get this objection to sobriety checkpoints. I really don't.
Well, as you know, Alberta and I introduced a lot less controversial legislation this session that we couldn't get passed.
Yeah.
We got one bill out of 8 done. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about sobriety checkpoints. We would not be requiring them. No. We would give local law enforcement the opportunity to do so if they felt it would be effective. And really, anyone who's not driving impaired has no reason to fear sobriety checkpoints, and studies have shown they do cut down on drunk driving crashes.
So you would support you would vote for something like this?
I would vote for something like that. I don't have a problem with it, Jeff, but I understand right now it's very controversial in Wisconsin. It's probably a non-starter right now, so I don't know that it is something we're going to make a big push for, but I would vote for it.
We could try it in Milwaukee, let Sheriff Clark pilot it and see what
happens.
Pilot
program, yes.
38 states have it, Bob. What do you think?
I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Obviously, Wisconsin has a big issue with drunken driving, and sobriety checkpoints have worked in other states, so I don't have a problem with that. What I do have, though, a concern about, Jeff, is these individuals who seem to get away with it constantly, 8, 9, 10 times that they've been pulled over.
Drivers.
That means they're driving that many times, 100 times drunk, and they get away with it. Those people we need to come down hard on.
Right. See, and I don't think anybody argues, Michael, that sobriety checkpoints are this magic bullet that's going to eliminate repeat drunk driving. Nobody argues that. But I think a lot of people believe it's another tool that you might give law enforcement to try to help deter people from getting behind the wheel of the car when they're too drunk to drive.
Yeah, logically, I don't think anybody can stand and say they're opposed to something that would benefit the public, you know, because drunk drivers pose a risk to everyone else. You know, I do have a problem with our dwindling civil liberties. You know, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that if you're really, really serious about getting guns on the street instead of the Sabbath thing that they're doing right now, ceasefire Sabbath, that what you need to do is enact some kind of laws in which police can stop and frisk anybody they want to. But that means that you're going to really have to give up your civil liberties. So are we willing to do that?
We are going to try to get some more tougher drunk driving legislation passed in the next session. We haven't given up on that.
I know you two feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, but I will tell you, this is one where I think the general public is way ahead of at least a lot of your colleagues.
Well, this is a good discussion for election season.
Absolutely. Okay, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell it to you anyways. Let's dish out some unsolicited advice. Mikel Holt.
Well, dating back to the previous topic, my unsolicited advice is to the movers and shakers of Milwaukee. Sandwich the Grand Avenue Mall in your plans to expand the Wisconsin Center and to build a new basketball arena. Maybe that will fly.
Alberta Darling.
To Mayor Barrett, declaring a ceasefire week isn't going to stop violence. This hashtag activism is not going to work, and we're not going to get serious about crime until we really do something about it.
Bob Donovan.
Well, along those same lines, my advice goes to the mayor: hire 200 more cops.
There you go.
Jim Ott.
The Federal Highway Administration says there's a shortfall in revenue collections because of more efficient automobiles on the road. My advice, rather than raising the federal gas tax, take a look in the streetcar piggy banks.
I like all the advice this morning. My unsolicited advice is for the Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm. John, you've dug yourself into a really deep hole with your latest John Doe investigation. Save yourself and the taxpayers a lot of extra aggravation. Fill in the hole, climb out, declare victory, and move on. Next on Sunday Insight, they want a $15 an hour minimum wage. Is that too much to ask? On Thursday, some fast food workers across the country walked off the job to call attention to their demand to be paid $15 an hour. Now, this effort's been going on for about a year, but doesn't really seem to be gaining much traction. So, are fast food workers entitled to a raise? And if so, what about other occupations that pay less than $15 an hour? Mikel Holt.
Are they deserving of a raise? Yes. I believe in raising the minimum wage to what, 10, 15, which is the common amount given. $15 an hour? No. I mean, these businesses would go out of business. If you had to pay $10 for a hamburger from McDonald's, McDonald's is closing down.
Right.
So, I mean, you're defeating the purpose of it. Even when you increase it 10, 15, some people are going to get laid off.
Sure.
So, I mean, we got to look at the broader picture. $15 an hour? Nah.
Now, Bob Donovan, tying on into Michael's point, is it being self-defeating by asking for this much money? Would this group be better off saying, raise the minimum wage to $9 or $10 or whatever? Would some people be more sympathetic?
I certainly think they would be a little more sympathetic. $15 is ridiculous, and what I would like to see, matter of fact, is the individuals who are proposing this be forced to take a remedial class in economics. Because they don't have a clue as to what really makes our system work. And if you truly want to make more money, you've got to acquire a skill and the education to do it these days. Those factory jobs just aren't there like they used to be.
Well, Jim, typically, the typical fast food job is an entry-level type of job. It's never been designed to be a family of four supporting job. I mean, is this absurd?
I'll tell you, one of the jobs I had many years ago was making pizzas. I had a part-time job to earn a little extra money. And I can tell you, you work really hard. When it gets busy, fast food workers work very hard. I started out at the minimum wage. The reason they started me at the minimum wage is if I would have said I wanted twice as much, the pizza parlor owner could have gotten other people to do that job. And number two, he would have had to charge so much for pizzas, as Michael said. You would charge so much for pizzas, you'd sell less pizzas, and unfortunately you'd have to lay people off. So rather than $15 an hour, some people would get no dollars an hour, they'd lose their jobs. The other thing is that the market forces and supply and demand, places like North Dakota, where there's a real demand for workers because of the oil boom, fast food workers do get more because the market will support it.
Alberta, at the end of the day, it's all supply and demand,
Exactly, exactly. And we believe in the free marketplace, and all they would do is have people lose their jobs and have $10 burgers. You're right. People have to understand, in order to get into a better paying job, you've got to get more education, more experience, more training. Actually, we have a lot of jobs that are out there that are not being filled. We have to step up to the bat and get more education, especially in the tech field. We've got to get those education gaps.
Yeah, I guess what I wonder is, okay, it's not just raising the minimum wage for the people that are making it. Then what about the people that make $2 more than the minimum wage? You've got to give them a raise.
Exactly.
What about the nurses? You know, there's nurses out there that aren't making this kind of dough. I mean, at some point in time, I think you have to say, again, it's supply and demand. Politically, though, I think if you were saying, hey, give us a $10 an hour minimum wage, that would be better. Okay. Is what they said this week what you heard? Let's go around the table. We start with Mikel Holt.
Okay, that's why I distinguish myself from the other panelists. A representative of the Attorney General's office said the court decision striking down a nonsensical voter right law gives the court the, quote, power of the governor. What I heard was an idiotic statement trying to justify an idiotic law.
Alberta Darling.
What they said, Michelle Obama posted a picture of her twittering with the hashtag Bring Our Girls Home. But what I heard was weakness. Hashtags won't save people. Americans wearing dog tags save people.
Bob Donovan.
What they said was that the proposal for the new arena and convention center makes sense. What I heard is that although that's true, the present leadership in Milwaukee seems incapable of getting it done.
I just keep thinking, Mayor Donovan. Jim Ott.
Am I too hard on the mayor? You know?
Jim Ott.
What the 7th Wisconsin District Court of Appeals said yesterday was that campaign finance law is in serious need of legislative attention. What I heard was campaign finance law is going to get some serious legislative attention in the next session.
Absolutely. And what they said was, I'll tell you what, we're running a little bit late. We're going to skip my piece. Oh, what I heard, the Brewers' $11 million man, Ricky Weeks, said he didn't want to try to play left field because he was a second baseman. What I heard was, play me where I want to play, cut me or trade me, but be sure to pay me. Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. First, though, here's your morning news update. To pick the winners and losers of the week, Mikel Holt, you're first.
Winners. Despite reduction in state aid, the Milwaukee School Board of Directors have proposed a budget that reduces spending while adding needed teachers and specialists to the classroom. On the flip side, because of those same cuts, MPS has been unable to close the gap between the city and suburban school districts.
Alberta Darling.
Free speech is the winner. The recent court ruling by the 7th Circuit reaffirmed our right to free speech. in political campaigns in Wisconsin, which is really important. The loser is the Obama administration's handling of health care for our veterans. At the Phoenix Veterans VA, it's a disgraceful, disturbing, and sad story. It's outrageous.
Bob Donovan.
Jeff, my losers continue to be the citizens of Milwaukee because despite state law and the recent decision by the Public Service Commission, the mayor sadly continues to move forward with this ridiculous downtown streetcar. My winners, however, are the entire Donovan clan, especially my parents, Bob and Gloria Donovan, who today are celebrating their 65th wedding anniversary. Congratulations, Mom and Dad.
How very cool.
Yes.
Jim Ott.
Congratulations.
Jeff, I'm going to devote all my time today to a real winner, our friend and former colleague Paul Zant, who died last week. Today's TMJ4 viewers will remember Paul as an excellent meteorologist and broadcaster. Those of us who worked with Paul also remembered him as a valued colleague and all-around wonderful person. Our thoughts and prayers are with Paul's wife, Joan, and the entire Zant family. We'll miss you, Paul.
And my losers this week are the many members of the Milwaukee County Board who are jumping ship and running for other political offices. Hey folks, how about getting a real job? My winner is unfortunately awarded posthumously, as Jim was talking about. Our friend and former colleague Paul Zant passed away this week after suffering a heart attack. He was a great guy. He will be missed. Sail on, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.